What is up, you guys? It is your buddy Upshall, bringing you guys a new video detailing the patch notes for the May update coming to Battlefield 1. Now, this is the first of the new monthly update system that is coming for the game, where DICE is going to attempt to improve the game on a fairly regular basis, and hopefully we'll get a bit more content along the way. Now, to start the video, I'm going to get into a couple of my favorite things that are coming in the May update, as well as then getting into the complete patch notes. Now, the first thing that I am fired up about, that I'm excited for, is the adjustments to the operation mode. Now, I'm sure if you guys do like operations, you know that right now it is becoming pretty hard to consistently join operations and getting full games, as opposed to what commonly happens is where the first time you matchmake, you get put into an empty lobby. And nobody likes that. That's pretty annoying. And in my opinion, Operations mode is the best mode in Battlefield 1. Now, I'm sure not everybody will agree with me, but I find that's the mode that I go back to. It gives you that kind of frontline feeling of action. It's 32 versus 32, just full-on objective gameplay, push the line, and I don't know, I just really enjoy the mode. So when the matchmaking for the mode is probably the worst out of any mode in the game, and by that I mean it's just the hardest to get a match consistently. I'm pretty happy to see that DICE is listening to the community and is working to fix those changes. Now, I don't think what they're doing is necessarily the most ideal fix, but it's at least a push into the right direction. So what they will be doing is, after an operation is finished, you won't be booted back to the main home screen. Instead, the same operation that you selected will repeat itself, and the teams will be switched. So say you were playing on Oil of Empires, you got 2/3 of the way through, you got stuck on Suez as the attacking team, you will then be kept in that playlist, you'll be kept on Oil of Operations, but you'll be switched to the defending side. And I think this is somewhat of a good fix, because it would allow people to at least stay in the operation, and it'll probably increase the likelihood of getting matched into an operation that it has enough players to play a match. Because even though I think a lot of people will get bored of the operation that they just played, they probably won't want to play the same one again, but maybe half the people who just played it will stay in the match, and that will be enough to get the operation rolling for the next crew. So you'll have, the operation will be typically 32 versus 32 player. You'll have, I'd say, half of those people will leave after they do one operation. You'll have 16 versus 16, but then another 32 people will come in, fill up the game, and it'll keep rolling through. Now, I don't think this is the ideal fix, again, because it's really just playing the same op over and over again. What I think will be the best way to go, and DICE has actually mentioned this in the patch notes, is to expand this feature to cycle through a complete operation playlist. And I think that's ideal. So as a player, you could pick the DLC operations as a playlist, or you could pick the vanilla operations as a playlist. I think that is where we should be going with operations, and I think it's going to really bring some more life back into Battlefield 1 and make what is my favorite game mode a lot better. They are also making changes to the way that the Bayonet charge works in this game, and I'm so happy to have read that in the patch notes this morning. So what they'll actually be doing is they'll be activating the aiming speed modifier during the prepare state, as well as the charge state. So this means that a player will only be able to rotate a maximum of 50 degrees during the prepare for the bayonet charge. So this basically means way less spin moves during a bayonet charge. They've also reduced the maximum turn rate while charging, and something that I didn't even know was in the game is that they've removed the damage reduction while in charge. So just to get that straight, DICE put in a damage reduction on a one-shot melee mechanic. I don't even know. But at least that is leaving, so now people will die at a consistent rate, or at an expected rate, when they are bayonet charging towards you. I can't even believe that was the case before. I guess I must have had my head under a rock to not know that. But yeah, that actually blew my mind when I read the patch notes. They've also fixed a bug where the player would have a hard time hearing the bayonet coming, and they wouldn't necessarily always get the vocal cue for the enemy's voice when they were doing the bayonet charge. You know when they do that ridiculous wail? Well, not everybody could hear that. Apparently, they're going to make that easier to hear for the person who could be potentially getting bayoneted. I think that could be, again, a step in the right direction for dealing with the one-shot bayonet cheese. DICE has also made considerable changes to the way that AA works, or anti-air works in the game, as well as changes to the behavior and the performance of the attack planes and the fighter planes. So to get started, they've changed the way that the cone of anti-air works. And that might sound a little bit weird, but players would complain before about being shot or not being able to shoot down planes when they were very high up in the air, as well as plane pilots complaining about being shot down very, very far away by the anti-air while at low altitudes. So the way that they've changed this or fixed this in the game, depending on your opinion, is that they've increased the vertical distance for the anti-air to 450 meters while limiting the horizontal difference to 300 meters. And while this conceptually is kind of weird because why can't the anti-air just shoot the same distance all around, this will have the effect of allowing a skilled plane pilot to evade better or easier at a low altitude, but prevent pilots from cheesing the anti-air by dropping bombs from 450 meters in the sky. And I think this overall might have a combination of effect. I think it might allow for a bit more skilled plane flying, but I don't know. It's kind of tricky. It really depends on what you like doing. As an infantry player, planes can annoy the living daylights out of you, but also as a guy who occasionally likes to get in the plane, I find sometimes I get absolutely ripped up by anti-air before you really get the opportunity to do anything. I can see this going really either way. I just kind of had to play more of the patch to get more of an opinion. I would love to hear about what you guys think about anti-air in the game in the comments, so feel free to rage away down there about this change, whether you're for or against it. Now, they've also changed up the way the attack plane and the fighter plane works so as to allow them to be a little bit more competitive in the air against each other. And really, I'm excited about this. Really, right now, the meta, the way the game is played in the air, is that if you want to win the gunfights in the air, you want to win that dogfighting plane-to-plane action, you pick the fighter plane. If you want to be more effective against ground targets, ever since the trench plane nerf, you pick the attack plane. So what they've done is they've actually made it so that the airship buster attack plane can corner better than the trench plane, or sorry, the fighter plane, but only when it has its special speed boost ability activated. And they have increased the rate at which you can use that. They've reduced the cooldown from 30 seconds to 15 seconds. So essentially you get this turn booster with the attack plane that can maybe give you a little bit of a heads up and give you a little bit of an advantage, or at least a competing attempt at taking out a fighter plane in this game. Now, to balance it as well with the fighter planes, they've boosted the attack damage of the airship buster's machine gun from 32 damage to 42 damage, and that again puts its damage per second about on par. They've also done some tweaking to the tank hunter attack plane where they've increased the velocity of its shot, and that's going to make hitting moving ground targets easier, but it's also probably going to make hitting moving plane targets easier as well. It's raising from 222 meters per second to 267 meters per second. I have seen some people who are straight nasty in the attack plane tank hunter variant just dunking on other planes with that thing. So if the shell fires quicker for them, it's going to make it easier for them to hit moving targets or moving planes. I can see that going a little bit crazy. But again, it's going to be more of a skill plane to use, so that might not necessarily be a bad thing. They've also added a new secondary weapon to the dogfighter fighter plane, which is incendiary ammo. When I read this, I feel like this is going to be so dirty. It's going to basically allow you to do increased damage to plane parts, allowing the dogfighter to quickly cripple an enemy plane by breaking up their wings. And if you've ever flown in this game, you know that as soon as your wings are down, it makes maneuvering very, very tricky. And pretty much when you are chasing a plane and you knock out something like the rear tail and they can't corner as tight, you basically know then, okay, this dogfight is in the bag. It's over. Tactical nuke inbound. GG. So I think that's going to be a little bit of an interesting change. I think you might see some more dogfighter picks resulting from this. So again, we'll have to see what happens post-patch. They've also swapped around the emergency repair to speed boost on the dogfighter and swap the speed boost to emergency repair on the bomber killer. basically allowing it to the bomber killer to survive getting tail gunfire more often from bombers and attack planes. Again, we'll just have to see how that plays out. They've also made a change with the netcode that's going to be coming as good news for those who have an unfortunately high ping. So they've implemented per region threshold settings for server-side hit detection. 130 milliseconds for US and Europe, as well as 200 milliseconds elsewhere. And they've fixed some aspects of the server-side hit registration interpolation, whereby the threshold for the leading shot. So before, just for anybody who doesn't know, the way the ping system worked is that if you had a 120 millisecond ping and you were playing above the former 100 millisecond ping threshold, you'd actually have to lead your shots by 130 milliseconds, which feels terrible when you're in game. So they've changed that system, so now that if you are playing in the US and you have 150 millisecond ping and the threshold is 130 milliseconds, well, that difference is now only 20 milliseconds, so you'll only have to lead your shot by 20 milliseconds. I know that might be a little bit confusing, but I think overall, if you're playing out of region, it's going to make things feel a little bit smoother than they have over the last week or so, well, month or so. And for the people playing in region, you're still going to get a little bit of an advantage over those playing out of region. Overall, I think DICE is trying to encourage people to play within region because it results generally in the best server performance and the best personal performance, and things just go smoother when you're in region. But for the people who unfortunately don't have a server close to where they live, I know some people in Egypt have been complaining in my streams about really, really poor ping issues. Hopefully that can fix some of the problems for you guys. Fingers crossed. They've also fixed input offsets for server-side hit registration to match client-side, and they've fixed wrong hit indicator display when dying. I've been getting random red hit markers and solid hit markers popping up whenever I die lately in the game, and I'm glad that DICE has seen that and it's getting fixed. DICE has also put in some effort in this patch to equalize the balance between the different types of tanks. They've reduced the self-repair time from 8 seconds to 5 seconds, but as a result of that, they've actually decreased the total health that you get from a self-repair. So that's when you're sitting in a tank and you hold the button to do the little circle self-repair, and if you take any damage during that time, it completely cancels your repair. Well, that will now heal your tank less, but the actual repair cycle will be done quicker. So that's going to be an interesting change for tank combat. They've also made some pretty considerable changes to light tanks as a whole. The light close support tank is going to have an increased ammo count from 4 to 5, and they're going to replace the shotgun canister shell with a coaxial light machine gun. And these changes could hopefully help to make the tank better fulfill a general purpose role. They've changed the flanker tank, which has that autocannon. They've increased the reload time of that autocannon from 2.5 seconds to 3.7 seconds, but they've actually increased the HE autocannon direct damage from 10.5 to 15, and from 12.5 to 17.5. So that's going to make the tank overall more effective against vehicles, but reduce its effectiveness against infantry. They've also changed the howitzer tank, which is that big mamba that everybody used to love back in the beta, where they've corrected the primary weapon to a HMG, or heavy machine gun, it was shown in customization, as a heavy machine gun. It's actually a light machine gun, but the more powerful heavy machine gun should help offset the limited firing arc when compared to the old light machine gun that used to be in the howitzer. They've also changed the driver's secondary weapon from a case shell to a flamethrower on the A7V flame tank variant. This change will help reinforce this variant's role as a close-range tank, and it's going to be a little bit more badass to be able to breathe fire as the driver. I think that's a pretty cool change. They've also added a third-person free look to the howitzer variant, and they missed this with the other tanks because the normal version has a turret that can rotate 360 degrees anyways. They've also made a pretty cool change to the Tank Hunter Landship variant, where they've added a rare firing tank gewehr as the driver's secondary weapon. that sounds pretty nasty. So if you're getting flanked, you can actually toggle to that and defend yourself from the butt with that rear-firing tank-avir. They've also enabled driving and third-person cameras while using the driver's rear guns in the squad support and tank hunter landship. They've improved the Mk5 mortar landship variant by changing the secondary mortar shell from airburst mortar to a heavy mortar, which will do more damage and is effective against both infantry and vehicles, but will have a longer reload as a trade-off. They've also replaced the smoke and gas mortar shells with the track repair and vehicle smoke equipment, and this is going to make the mortar landship much more viable as a combat vehicle. It's going to discourage people from just sitting in a mortar stance in the back line. Again, going back to operations, seeing a tank camping in your own spawn, just mortaring and not really helping the team's push was very frustrating. Not really sure if this is going to completely get rid of that, but hopefully, again, it'll be a step towards team play and a step away from camp play. Fingers crossed. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this breakdown of the patch notes. It was a pretty extensive list, so thank you guys for watching the complete video. I also hope you guys enjoyed the light flanker tank gameplay. This was before the patch that is going to reduce this tank's effectiveness against infantry. I don't know if I'll see any more 67-1 gameplays with it, but we'll see what we can do. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you did find the video helpful, you can leave a like down below. If you hated it, feel free to leave a dislike. Subscribe for more Battlefield and gaming related content, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.